I want to extend a very warm welcome to all of you joining Team Coaching Circle. As always, appreciate you trusting your time and carving those 60 minutes in your busy agendas to join the conversation. My name is Egle Holton. I am Team Coaching Practitioner and your host for today's session. For those who are joining Team Coaching Circle for the first time, let me very briefly introduce what Team Coaching Circle is all about. So ultimately, Team Coaching Circle community was created a year ago as learners community to bring practitioners in team coaching field together. Coming together beyond a specific school or discipline or even accreditation body. Ultimately, just having this open space for connection and exploration. We meet on a monthly basis, we share knowledge, we share tools, case studies, interventions, and this particular initiative is supported by ICF Ireland chapter. Again, as a reminder, you can claim your ICF CCE units at the end of the session. As you can see, the session is being recorded and all of those resources and recordings will be shared afterwards with the members of the community. So today, we're diving into the topic that has sparked a lot of curiosity in our learners space. Since Team Coaching Circle began, co-coaching consistently came up as something what practitioners wanted to dive deeper and explore. So I'm really thrilled to have a fully dedicated session to this. And I am absolutely delighted to welcome very special guest speakers, Caroline Duffy and Jennifer Campion, who are here to share their wisdom and experience with us. Hi, Caroline. Hi, Jen. Hi.
Hey, hey everyone. Good to see you all.
Good to see you all. Yes.
Yeah, good to see you all. And in my opinion, I'll be very honest, I think that there are no better people to guide us through this particular conversation. Both Caroline and Jen worked extensively in co-coaching partnership and bring this wealth of first-hand insight into what is that makes these collaborations successful. They both are highly experienced team and leadership coaches with, I was calculating, over 30 years of combined experience working with senior teams across public and private sectors. Jen and Caroline are also educators. They are faculty members of Team Coaching Studio, where they mentor the next generation of team coaching practitioners. Caroline, Jen, thank you so much for being here with us and your generosity in sharing. So I'd like to pass on to you and I can pull some slides.
Thanks, Egle.
Thank you.
It's lovely to see you all, Jen. I've been really looking forward to this session, having this conversation with you over the next 60 minutes or so. As Egle said there, we co-coach with each other, we co-coach with other coaches, we also co-facilitate on training and education programs, and we also work solo as coaches with different teams. So what we hope to do today is to bring a little bit of that to life for you all and really build a bit of a conversation in relation to co-coaching. And I guess the question that we're really keen to explore and help you think about is what are the conditions that you need? So you uniquely, because everybody's different. I think that's something that's really important to us. So this is about thinking about what's right for you and what's right for you maybe with different teams, because it's not always going to be the same thing. So what are the conditions that you need to have in place to be able to confidently coach either alone or with a partner? And so, I guess our intention and hope today is just to help you explore some of the different areas or questions that you may have that will help you make an intentional choice or decision about whether with a team you work solo or whether you want to work with a partner. And if it's with a partner, then who is that partner and how do you go about building a really brilliant relationship with them as you co-coach together? So that's just a little bit of the framing, just thinking about this from your own unique perspective. And so as we do that, what we're hoping to do is explore emerging best practice. As you all know, team coaching is still an emerging field of practice in itself. And so co-coaching is building, and our knowledge and experience around co-coaching is building within that. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll hear some of your thoughts as well in relation to best practice that you're experiencing. Jen and I will share our stories where appropriate or relevant in terms of us working together or with others or alone, just to try and bring everything to life with you. And we'll explore the different modes of a team coach and use that to frame how you actually make these different decisions about whether you co-coach or don't co-coach, or who you might co-coach with. And of course, then we'll talk about some of the benefits, some of the richness that can come both for you as a coach and also for the team through co-coaching, but some of the challenges and pitfalls that you may also face that are important to be aware of and navigate, again, intentionally and consciously with your co-coach and the team itself. And of course, as we move towards the close of the session, we'll give you a little bit of time just to reflect on your own initially, and then hopefully with some others in breakout groups, just to think about what's landing with you from our conversation today. So that's a sense of what we're going to do as we go through the program. And Jen's just going to talk just a little bit now about I guess, the high level pieces on that.
Yeah. Thanks, Caroline. So really looking forward to getting into this. We've run this webinar on co-coaching before, and just the insights we get from it through sharing of our own experience and thoughts is just so rich. I know the last time we this key question of how is it of value to the team and throughout the coaching process has really stayed with me. So it's not just about pitching and selling the mode of co-coaching, but how do we continuously ensure that that value is brought through? So looking forward to the learning we'll get from today's. Egle, if you don't mind just popping on a slide there. So we wanted to start with kind of, is it best practice? How many of us do or don't, or for what reasons? So we'd love just to get a sense of everyone here today. If you could pop into the chat, how much you kind of, your range of co-coaching or coaching solo. So you might pop in kind of always co-coaching, sometimes, haven't tried it yet. Whatever your stance on co-coaching or coaching solo is, just in a word or two, just so we get a sense of where people are coming from. If you could pop that into a chat. Thank you. Hannah, a couple of times on solo coaching. Started more recently. Mostly solo. So lovely, a lovely range. And so again, that's why we wanted to bring in the individual reflection later as well, just to kind of honor where you're at with the kind of teams that you work with on your learning journey. Some of you may take from this if you continue to coach solo, but you might put in other structures or thought processes around what you might do in and outside of coaching that gives you that support that you need. So in terms of, I suppose, when we looked at the coaching bodies and what they have in their team coaching competencies, the ICF, EMCC and AC all refer to co-coaching, but again, it's not exclusive. So ICF refers to it mostly, predominantly with the strongest voice, I suppose. And as I go through this, you might think about kind of how you're living this if you are someone who co-coaches. So they mention it under demonstrating ethical presence, that you will bring in that co-coach if the engagement demands it. So that kind of touches on the team dynamics or the complexity maybe of the situation. How are you at establishing and maintaining agreements? And that's not just with the team that you might be working with. So we kind of need to be able to educate on the value of co-coaching. You want to contract on the role and how co-coaching works. But how do you manage and maintain that agreement between you as co-coaches? How are you contracting with each other throughout the engagement? How much space and time is available for you to kind of focus and work on your relationship? And we'll talk a little more about the importance of that. It comes up in maintaining presence. And when we get to the modes of coaching, kind of speaking to that in terms of what's available to you as kind of one coach might take on one mode and another coach then has that a different presence available to them. And then it's also, they mention it under listens actively. So it allows you to demonstrate between the two of you some of the patterns or I suppose maybe learning development goals the team might have around effective communication and collaboration. So your ability, and also obviously to bring difference and openly challenge each other. So you're practicing and role modeling that. The EMCC also mentioned it. They've a specific competency around it, and AC is a lighter touch. So it's definitely emerging in terms of the competencies that they see a coach needing. And what we really want to bring today is a greater clarity for you around your intentional reason to bring in a co-coach, and how, as I mentioned, you continue to intentionally use that throughout the team's co-coaching journey. So some things you might consider. I'd love to see, again, if people have pop into the chat, anything else that you have considered that we haven't touched on before. So when we're thinking about this, we think about our approach. So as Caroline and I, we were kind of trained and work with the Team Coaching Studio, which has predominantly emergent coaching style. We do bring in some structure and frameworks in terms of particularly setting the team up, but a lot of it is paying attention to what emerges in the room. And so for us, as we speak to the modes of coaching later, a co-coach really enables that. So thinking about your own coaching approach, where and when would a co-coach enable you to bring that most fruitfully to the team? We think about team size, the complexity of not just the team dynamics, but the wider organizational dynamics, the client appetite for it. So for some, having two in the room might be just too many eyes, too much focus. And I know a colleague of mine who started off solo coaching, and then as the trust built with the team and their understanding of what team coaching is and their appetite for team coaching, she brought in a coach then, and they could more specifically work on the dynamics. And then also team coaching part of the wider system change and cultural process, in terms of some of the levers the organization might be striving for, is very useful to have that co-coach present, because one of you can particularly pay attention to that systemic element, while the other might bring in more of the team lens. So Caroline, is there anything there in the chat that you kind of see that?
Some interesting points around, a couple people are saying about the size of the team, but also with a large team online, I guess when you're managing the technology as well as the dynamics and having more than one coach or co-coach. Also length of time, if you're maybe with a team for a full day or a half or 2 days even, that, to hold attention, that, working with two coaches can be really supportive there as well. Trying to see what else. Client appetite and budget is a significant factor. And, absolutely, a client, if they know you, may hesitate at bringing somebody else in if you have trust with them. So there can be something to consider there. And certainly budget, although I guess, Jen, in our experience, budget's very much the same for any upfront discovery work when you do move into delivery. And faced in person or remote contact time, you absolutely, the client's paying for two. So hence those considerations around size, dynamics is always part of the conversation.
Yeah. And even like kind of what's too big, what's small enough. And again, depending on our approach, the one blends into the other. So as we move to the next slide, Egle, this is the frame from Team Coaching Studio. It also comes from a Gestalt perspective in terms of considering your own needs as team coach. Where is your skill set and experience lending itself to the team? Where might you benefit from bringing in someone else? You might also think in terms of your what you're noticing and patterns, or you might be triggered in some way in a team. Recently enough, I was working with a team where I had been part of their system previously, even though it was a totally different cohort of people. So there might be some triggers for self, or some self-awareness there. We're also thinking of the team factors that we've just mentioned, but also that situational context piece. Even more and more, could have a whole webinar soon, no doubt, on systemic lens of coaching and how that manifests. So kind of we'll bring you through a reflection piece later on in the webinar, but it does take into consideration the self, team and situation of this intentional choice. So we might move now to exploring, which are already starting to be mentioned in the chat. So maybe we can bring some voices in as well. And we hope to bring in some of our experience around what we've realized are the benefits and pitfalls of co-coaching. Caroline.
Well, yeah, I'll just chat a little bit to this slide, and then it'd be good maybe to hear some of your voice
Mm,
around this. And again, this is what we've, been thinking of. You may have more, more factors that we can add in and use to deepen the conversation. When we're thinking about the team, with more than one coach in the room, some of the benefits for the team are a richer and more diverse experience for the client, so that they get two voices, they get two hearts, two brains in the thinking and in the work. And so therefore the team really benefits from having the experience and the skills and capability of two coaches there in the room, and that allows for more breadth in any coaching in service of the team. So for example, sometimes with teams you may be doing one-to-one coaching for team members, um, in service of the team coaching, or you may wish to do things like group coaching or peer coaching, and alternate that around team coaching sessions. Two coaches allows you just to slice and dice a little bit. It's also helpful for continuity. For example, if there are issues, maybe one coach has an issue, attending, a session can still go ahead potentially with just the one coach. So there's some lovely benefits for the team. Jen mentioned the different modes. So what can happen when you have two coaches in the room is that the coaches can track different things. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but one coach could maybe lead and facilitate, whereas the other coaches may be tracking patterns or dynamics, or dialogue within the room. So two coaches can work on different things simultaneously with the client, which again gives a richer experience. That builds on different levels of listening, perspectives, and insights. So when Jen and I are coaching in a room together, what I notice is not always what Jen notices, and vice versa. And that brings a real richness for the client in terms of, something that may have passed me by. Jen sees and picks up, and we can take that and start to work with that with the team. So there's support there in managing dynamics, both within the room and then also afterwards in reflection. And one of the things that we believe it's really important is that, as you go through working with a team as a co-coach, that you take plenty of time to reflect and potentially even attend supervision together to
mm.
really support that debrief and reflection piece, so that you are, showing up for the team in the best way and in the most aligned way together. Having, two sets of experience in the room helps with creativity. Here's how we could try something, here's how we could do something. So again, something that you may not have thought of, your co-coach may do. And that can be a really great learning experience for the team. For live action coaching and timeout reflection. So often what we'll do working with a team is they'll kind of hold and facilitate their own discussion, and we'll almost sit outside the circle and just notice and observe. And then what we do is we'll have a conversation together about what we're noticing with the team, whilst not actually speaking with the team. And that can be really rich just for two coaches to have that conversation. So there's great opportunity to role model teamwork and effective dialogue together. Benefits for the coaches, all of the above, but also getting the wonderful experience of working with somebody else, of learning from them, learning about what they noticed, how they do things. There's such rich learning in that. And then the feedback that they're able to offer you as part of that process, and learning from their practice. Um, and, I think for us, something that's really important when you're working with a co-coach, you're going through the teaming process yourselves in many ways. Even if you've worked with each other for a while, with a new team, every situation is different, as you all know, and therefore different things can be triggered, different things can emerge or evolve. And so therefore working together and teaming in that and noticing, well, how is what we're doing and what we're maybe challenged by, how is that maybe paralleled with the team, and what does that mean? What can that mean then for our support for the team and what we work with them in doing in the moment with them? So overall, co-coaching can bring a really richer and more diverse experience for the team. But as we said before, there are all of those different factors to consider when making that intentional choice about what you do with that. So if I maybe just press pause for a moment there and
Mm.
invite if anybody has a question or a reflection on what we've just shared. Marie, I see you've raised your hand. It'd be lovely
Hi,
just to hear. Hi,
yes,
Marie.
thank you for the information. This is quite new to me. And I was just wondering how you would go about creating that unity, because there are times when you get along really well with someone, but in a different context, it may not work the way that you have seen it. So, what would you advise someone to do prior to going in an environment where you're going to do co coaching so that it can actually run harmoniously?
Jen, my initial thoughts are very much you need to have very honest conversations before you start co-coaching together, exploring things together, like why do you team coach? What's your philosophy around team coaching? What energizes you and helps you thrive when you're team coaching? What's important to you in terms of the type of work you do and your style as a team coach? What challenges you, what triggers you, what are you working on, what do you tend to get anxious about as a team coach, and hearing that from your co-coach and having that kind of a conversation. And then, as Jen said, as you go through the team coaching work with the client, continuously debriefing and recontracting and having those conversations about how you're doing in the room with all of that knowledge. Um, you know, Sharing all of that with each other before you go into your room, and then working through it in terms of how are we doing with that? How am I supporting you? Where can I bring you more challenge as your co-coach? Help me understand why you do that. Help me understand how I can support you to do that better. Those are all really good questions and conversations to have around that.
Well, in
Mm.
that respect, I just had, I guess, the follow-up questions. That would be, is there anything that you could do together to build that before having the first draft in a co-coaching area? Like, would you go into a session with them and observe the way that they coach? Or is there an activity that you would suggest that you try or a tool you use before you go into that situation after having this honest conversation?
Jen, sorry, were you going to come there?
No, I know there is an article by colleagues in the team coaching studio that they've come up with kind of a co-coaching um contracting questions that you might go through together. So that might give you the foundations of some of what Caroline's saying. And at what points then you might kind of retake out and more explore that explicitly. But in terms of an activity, what I try and think about is, are we mirroring between us what we're encouraging the team to do? So whatever your approach is, whatever your methodology is, have you and your co-coach practiced and been through that together?
Yeah. And Marie, I see you're asking who's the article by. Um, I think, Jen, we can get a copy of that and maybe share it with Team Coaching Circle. It's a lovely toolkit as this is emerging practice on working with a partner. Other things like, going into support, maybe in a facilitation space, can also be helpful. Just to get a sense of style and how somebody works in the room can be helpful. Matthew, and then we'll maybe look at pitfalls.
Yeah.
I think this is more of a business question. It's hard enough to convince people to take you on as an individual, as a coach. And I'm just wondering what type of an opportunity might you be looking at that could get you to start thinking, something I can't really cover this on my own, or I think I know somebody else that has particular skills that I do. And then how do you formulate that into a proposal to your customer? Because they will be paying double, basically, on top, and you'll have to try and convince them that I'm not missing something, but this person brings an extra dynamic. Because you have that pessimistic buyer who will be saying, why do you need another coach? Do you not know what you're doing? That'd
Yeah.
be a buyer. That'd be a buyer from Tesco or something.
Yeah. I guess we present it, from the outset in terms of, this is always an option that there would, that there could be two coaches with you. And as we build a conversation, it's very much around what is it that you are hoping to gain from a team coaching piece of work. Tell us about your context, your work, your system, the team. And those factors, you know, for example, like, yeah, we have somebody on the chat there said, you know, less than 6 people and I'll coach alone, more than 6. The complexity is such that I would bring a co-coach in. So some of this is about your boundaries, Matthew, knowing where your boundaries are. I think for me, it's between 6 and 8, but it's also about the complexity of the organization. So a large financial services organization, or the likes of a Tesco, you know, my encouragement from the beginning would always be about 2 team coaches because of the complexity of the work that the team are likely doing and the ecosystem within which they operate. And so therefore, you know, the ability to have 2 coaches in the room, but also 2 coaches, you know, to help with the discovery work, to speak with stakeholders potentially as you go through the process, can be really helpful as well. And so we tend to frame it from the place of the value over the longer term in terms of what it is you're really trying to shift and change in the team, and how 2 team coaches can help with that. And so, yeah, there's always a conversation around budget, I think, is our experience. But when you present it in that way, it often feels okay for the client, know that they can accept that this is about how we offer a richness for you as the client, as opposed to I'm a bit nervous, I don't think I could do this on my own. You know, the stance is different. And it's about, you know, if you believe that and you've thought that through, the client will see that as authentic, and consider that with you. So
Somewhat, I suppose you need to have felt and experienced the value and seen the value to the team. So I know came from a facilitation background, so started off team coaching on my own, but put through kind of 2 sets of training. I did SmartFit, or team coaching studio. Part of the learning experience was co-coaching. And then once I could see and experience the value the team is receiving, not me, like that was my intent going in, I'll have someone there to help me learn better, but actually seeing the impact on the team that we wouldn't have gotten alone helps you kind of find the words, but also the stories to make it more explicit. But it's not plain sailing. You may find yourself having to break up with the coach or expand differently or move in a different direction. So we might move into the pitfalls. Carmel, I know you have a question as well, so we'll come back to that.
yeah, if we hold, Carmel, your question and come back maybe with once we've chatted on the pitfalls here. So as we've spoken about a little bit there, your synergy with your co-coach and the chemistry is important. You know, does it feel in the room like you're aligned and that you can role model well for the client? And for that, you know, we've put in the ABC, always be contracting. So not just at the beginning of a process, but throughout the team coaching work, that you're as much as you're kind of recontracting, debriefing, working with the client, the team throughout the process, you're also doing that with each other as you learn and evolve through this piece of work with this team. Sometimes you can have different philosophies and styles, and as Jan said, they just don't align and, you know, lead to disconnect in the room. And maybe ultimately you do make a choice that partnering together is not for us. I know I've had that experience in the past where a co-coach, we were put together because of, you know, requirements from the client, and actually it didn't play out well in the room. It wasn't as rich an experience, and that was real learning for me about the importance of really having those conversations up front, working that through, and having almost signals in the room about, you know, if you're in different places, you know, how do we navigate that? Likewise, you know, if you're working with a philosophy and style with somebody who's just really like you, it may not bring enough diversity for the team. So whilst you may feel very comfortable with each other, it may not, you know, bring enough for the team. So that's always something to consider as well. You know, will you, and what your co-coach, will you bring enough stretch and diversity to really support the team? And that can be a helpful piece just to consider. Sometimes with 2 coaches in the room, the team might be, well, what are you going to do? Is one of you going to take notes and the other facilitate us? You know, what are you going to do? So just being really clear on, you know, we're both coaches and we'll both be tracking different things as we work together, and we'll be sharing with you what that is as we go, or, you know, potentially you'll just notice us doing different things. And that can also be, you know, drawing on each other's strengths, as in, you know, what your co-coach sees, as I said earlier, may not be what you necessarily see. What can also happen again, and these are all just dynamics to navigate, be aware of, and work through. Sometimes team members could be attracted to one coach more than the other. Maybe that's because they know them. Maybe that's because you're doing some one-to-one coaching, or, you know, other work with particular members of the team, and therefore they feel an affinity with you, and therefore, you know, attention between the coaches may be divided within the room. So being aware of that and just working to navigate well through that kind of thing, you know, noticing how maybe people are drawn to your partner because they have maybe a particular background, you know, that can be interesting to know. That can also play out in gender, you know, different things like that. So just being aware of all of that can be really helpful. Sharing with your co-coach what you're noticing, and working with the team then, and sharing with them if and where helpful, you know, what you're noticing around that. And the piece, you know, back to our questions, that piece around the commercials and the impact and price is always something to be considered and worked through with the client. So I'll pause again, and we'll maybe take a few minutes. And Carmel, will we start with you? You've been very patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. It was more, yes, more of a statement. If you're working in a large corporate, I can see the attractiveness to the team coaching, because then you can also share the one-to-one coaching, share the discovery sessions with your sponsors, your stakeholders, etc., and even group coaching across the wider sort of. So I think that bit of it in a corporate, you know, is very attractive. Having done therapeutic group work in my previous life as a therapist, I'm sure signposting issues must come up in some of the team coaching, where, you know, it's maybe more of a therapeutic type approach that might benefit some of your clients. And I'm wondering, has that, you know, something you've ever noticed? And the way we notice it in coaching on a one-to-one, and we will signpost our clients for a different type of support. I'm just wondering if it's something you've ever noticed, Caroline or Colette. Thank you.
Jen, do you want to speak to that?
I'm trying to think of an experience, and just to clarify, is it kind of signposting to a different mode of team development or team support that might be needed in a member of the team or the wider team? Is that the question?
It could be a single member or more than one member, Jen. I'm thinking more where you would see the value of a more therapeutic type, whether it's anger management or somebody that has anxiety and stress that belongs to a more therapeutic type. I just wondered, having done that in my past work as an occupational therapist, if that sometimes features in team coaching.
I suppose it's more broader team coaching question, but I suppose my experience to date is the contracting upfront in terms of boundaries, because it is in a group environment and the team are still working together. So those kind of early conversations in terms of individuals, you want to encourage psychological safety and sharing, but minding of your own personal boundaries and how different that is for each team member, and how you might be able, how we might pick up if you need something different. So you're kind of signposting it early in terms of if a different intervention is needed, if a different level of support, if we touch on something and actually afterwards this feels like it's not supportive to you, or like, please feel free to reach out. So that kind of continuous contracting, but signposting it up front. I suppose my experience is not from a therapeutic, but I have worked with teams where they want strategy facilitation. So it's kind of a continuous question in terms of what you as coach and in your own experience and skill set is available to provide and not provide, and that clear contracting.
Yeah.
How did that land in terms of your question?
Yes, I mean, I in the same way as our one-to-one coaching, where we have to signpost on and do for our clients, it's the same kind of issue. And yes, with your sponsor, obviously those boundaries and contracting are very clear from the outset, Jen. So
Yeah.
thank you.
And you know, when we're team coaching, it's very much this is in service of the team, the collective, and that's the entity. So that's where we're doing the work. However, you know, if we notice something in one person, you know, often because we do a lot of one-to-one discovery work up front, we'll often have a relationship or a contact, you know, with that person. Often in discovery work, we'll ask, how can we support you in the room? To know as we go into the work together. But if there's something that we can see in terms of somebody's behavior, often there's just an informal conversation to know how are you doing in this, and if there's signposting, you know, potentially that might be helpful for you to consider, but not. I think Rachel, you posted there, you know, this is not about fixing one person and one person's behavior in a team. You know, that if that was the case, then we wouldn't engage in team coaching. This is about helping the collective move forward.
That's very helpful. Thank you, Caroline. Jan.
Great question.
Mary,
Mary, there is a question. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add on that topic, I always find when working with a team in scenarios like Carmel is explaining, promoting the use of the employee assistance program if it is a larger company. And in fact, you know, uptake does happen with the support of coaching, highlighting that as, you know, an amenity and a resource, a tool that employees can use, but they just forget about. So I do find that helps.
and I think, Mary, with that as well, often, you know, Jen or I or other partners we work with will also work with an internal team coach. And that can be really helpful as well because they know the internal system and supports and what might be available. So that I always feel, you know, very reassured if maybe even the HR partners on the team, or if, you know, we have an internal team coach, you know, partnering with me, because it gives that knowledge of the system that can be supportive in those conversations as well. I want to move on to the modes, but I see just the next slide there, Egle and Raja, just in terms of your question there. Yes, we do. We do generally one-to-one discovery with every team member, or if the team wants to focus on building collaboration more, then we will maybe do small peer group sessions to help them build skill and having dialogue and building collaborative flow with each other. But we connect with everybody before we go into the room. Jen and I both mentioned the modes of team coaching, so I just want to take a moment and share this with you. So again, this is Team Coaching Studio. Different schools will have different versions of it. But these are effectively the three ways that you team coach, the three different kind of modes or stances that you can take as you coach a team. And if you're working in your own, what you're doing effectively is managing all of these yourself. And that's why if you've got a smaller team, maybe where it's not so complex in the world around it, it's a smaller organization, you can generally manage this very well and effectively as a team coach on your own. Our encouragement is, of course, when you've got two team coaches, you can split this out between you. And then that can help to really bring in that diversity and richness of the different perspectives. So for example, if, you know, Jen and I were kicking off with a team, I would maybe take on mode one, facilitative. So I'm setting the day up, helping to create the container, leading, directing, doing all of that kind of thing, helping people land well in the room and move forward. Jen, as I'm doing that, could be in mode two, which is helicopter. She's just noticing who speaks first. She's just observing, you know, what are the interruptions like? Is there a lot of interruptions? How do the team seem to feel with silence in a conversation? So she's maybe just noticing those different patterns And as you go through the session, just sharing a little bit of that back to raise awareness. If you think a lot of coaching, any coaching work is about raising awareness. So that mode 2 is very much about raising that awareness and sharing the patterns and the dynamics back with the team. And then mode 3, again, is that submarine. So that's noticing what am I feeling in myself? Am I feeling a bit of anxiety in my stomach? Am I feeling a bit of tension in my shoulders? Do I feel something in my throat in terms of maybe, not feeling free to speak well? And what might that mean? And just often, in that mode 3, sharing that with the team. So I notice just at the moment, I feel a big tension in my stomach. I feel a bit anxious. As I say that, how does that land with the team? And so that mode, and that can be really helpful then for the team, because they may say, yes, I feel a bit frustrated too. I feel like we're just going round in circles here. So noticing what you feel in yourself at the somatic level and offering that without attachment. And if everybody in the team goes, no, it's just you, then well, that's okay. Let's move on. But sharing that can help the team notice maybe and bring awareness to what else is playing out within the team. So, when you've got those 3 different modes, 2 coaches in the room supporting you to do that, can be really helpful around that whole piece of noticing, raising awareness, and then obviously of supporting the team to build their capability to work through their different dynamics and patterns.
And this bit, I suppose, if I come in from that kind of question or learning I got from the last time we presented our co-coach webinar was the value to the client. And that reflection was, I was probably working with coaches at the time in a co-facilitation, like I'll start off with this and you do the contracting and then maybe I'll take the lead out on this, whatever we might have shaped the day around. And so we're just both moving in from mode 1 and we might do a little mode 2. But actually really working together before and during in the room. And then over time, if you're continuously growing and learning from each other in terms of feedback and what you were noticing and what parallel processes are coming up, these modes will start to kind of move fluidly throughout the day. So you might be more structured in your first session with the team and have kind of agreed plan and who might take on what. And that's kind of that higher level of structure up front in a team coaching engagement is typical. But between your relationship and with the team, these fluidity between the modes is where the real value will come up. The real observational sharing and knowing and listening to that use of self of when the team are ready to hear this and reflect on it and be able to digest it, in my experience, is kind of that continuously bringing forward the value of 2 people, 2 coaches in the room. Marie, have you got a question or an observation to share with us?
Actually, it's a question. My question was, in terms of doing mode 1, sometimes there's someone doing mode 1, sometimes there's someone doing mode 2, or both of you are doing mode 1, as you stated. How would you go about being fully present with the client, yet still being able to observe and provide feedback to each other? Because to me, that would be split and I would be bouncing back and forth, but I'm wondering, how do you navigate that?
Caroline, do you want to answer? You look thoughtful.
I think one is, the first one is to intentionally agree how you'll do that in the room before you go into the room. So Jen and I would have had conversations about, so if this happens, we'll just stop and pause. Or Jen might say to me, why don't we just pause for a moment and just, share what we're both thinking here about what's playing out in the team. So there'll be something intentional that you have agreed up front. And certainly, my experience is in the early stages of your relationship with a team coach, being intentional about how you want to do that stuff in the room and saying, right, if I can't put my hand up and just say, something like that, that means I think we need to pause and have a bit of a conversation and share with each other. And that can be done in front of the team. My experience is then, as you get to work together more and more, as with any colleague, collaborator, you know, team colleague, that just flows a little easier. So you look at each other and you kind of notice, you say, okay, well, look, I think Jen wants to come in here. And just, you know, give that space for your partner to come in and share what they've noticed or what they're thinking of, or if they think I've missed something, you know. So I could say, Jen, what am I missing, as I share that back. Or Jen might give me a look, a wink or whatever, and I'll go, okay, Jen, you know, what do you think? She says, well, I think maybe what we might be missing here is this. So it's just about how you start to contract and articulate about how you will do all this in the room, and keep that conversation live as you go.
And then the follow-up question to that, sorry, is very quick, but in terms of letting the clients know, are you telling them that, you know, we're going to be communicating, sometimes we'll be off to the side or there'll be a pause? Because I just fear that if it's not done, they might think that you're having a secret conversation, which can change the dynamics of the group. So I'm not sure if we present that at the beginning or as it's happening, you let them know. What do you suggest or what works for you?
We do both. I suppose we let them know in advance. And I think also to name, like, we in the moment might notice something, we might have a conversation with it to explore what we're observing or noticing, and then we'll hand it back to you as the team. So they're listening to the exchange between us, but you're also naming that we're not going to get it perfect, like, and that we might just be feeling something, noticing something, feeling that there's something here, offer it back to the team to decide if they want to pick it up and go with it. And then in the moment, because again, they might forget what you've contracted for in your team engagement session, kind of reminding them, particularly the first or second or third time, we're just going to pause here. Can we take a couple of moments? I'm noticing something, Caroline, this is what it is. Caroline, you might crisp it up for me and share it back to the team. So in a way, you're also role modeling the vulnerability that would take for them to pause a conversation going mid-flow, to go, actually, hang on, there's something here I'm stuck on, or I'm noticing that's not helpful for us. So you, again, that role modeling piece of over time, hopefully you're encouraging them to start the practice of pausing and paying attention to the process that's happening in the team.
And I'm thinking, Jen, of when we've been in a room and completely missed each other, to know, kind of like, what's Caroline doing or what's Jen doing? And actually that moment with a bit of humor, you know, coming in and sharing that vulnerability, and you know, again, you're showing the team about, like, it's okay not to be perfect. You know, this is the spirit of coaching, was about awareness, curiosity, learning, and experimenting together. Jen, do you want to pick us up?
Yeah, I'm conscious of there's another question maybe coming through. So Egle, if you don't mind switching back to the slide, we wanted to give you this 5 minutes because there's lots been explored, and thank you so much for all the questions and the comments. So we want to give everyone 5 minutes, because we all think we'll do this after, and then we get sucked up into the busyness. And we've created these questions out of self, team, and situation. So I'll guide you through kind of 5 minutes of self-reflection to jot down your own questions for yourself, and you might start to answer them in this time. So the first, we'd like you to take a lens, and you can just do this on your own paper. You don't need to put it into the chat or your own notebook that you're using. So in what way do I believe a co-coach synergy might enhance the coaching experience? So what do you really believe, based on what's talked about today, would really add value to the team coaching experience? So capture in your own words, maybe a question you need to reflect on further. Are you able to see how co-coaching might enhance the team coaching experience? Next, we'll just ask you to consider what are potential blind spots or biases you might have noticed in your work with teams, or in individuals, or in team facilitation, whatever it is. This could be in terms of your skills, your experience, your triggers, your preferences. So what are those blind spots, and how might a co-coach offer a different perspective to see the whole picture more clearly? Where do you lean into, or where do you lean away from? And then, so maybe thinking about the modes we just spoke about, or maybe there's a dynamic in a current team that you're working with. If you had a co-coach in the room, how might have that supported you to explore that complexity or the emotional intensity with the team? If we move to team, then you might just start to draw a mind map or a picture of where your conditions or guide rails are in terms of intentionally choosing to work with a co-coach or to work solo. So what's the team size for you? What are the complexity dynamics of teams you work with or know of today that might make you pause and consider the benefits of co-coach, and when might solo coaching feel the best option? As I said earlier, sometimes kind of the two in the room might be overwhelming for the team. What are the factors you put in place for yourself? Okay, and then the situation. So in the first self-reflection, I asked you to kind of articulate the value that you would see co-coaching would bring. But given your client's context, how might you translate that or articulate it for their needs, for language that they would be drawn to? Is it maybe partnering with someone internal if cost is a challenge? Timer goes off. And then finally, you might just take with you the organizational system effects on the team and how with a co-coach, one or both of you can shift between what lens you're paying attention to, the work of the team and the work of the wider organization or system they exist in. Any reflection thoughts you have there that you just want to capture for yourself? We're just at the end of the reflection. Anything, Caroline, in the post there for us to call out? But great insights from everyone.
No, just yeah, some lovely additions, builds, summaries of the conversation we've been having. So I wish we had another half hour, but sure.
Yeah, I know there's an ask there for the breakout rooms. We did think about it, but we thought to capture thoughts and the more group discussion. So I know some are missing the breakouts. So Egle then, will we hand back?
Absolutely. And yeah, I wish we had that additional half an hour for continuation as the conversation was very rich. And I just wanted to appreciate once again for your generosity in sharing your insights and experience. If you would like to continue the conversation with Jen and Caroline, you can catch them on LinkedIn. So here are profile links where you can just scan your QR code and connect with them online. And what I would like to do in the next couple of minutes is just to share a very quick preview what's coming in next in the team coaching circles. So let me do that very, very briefly. So we're meeting in June with Dr. Sebastian Fox, who will present a really interesting study, research, exploring what is it that makes team coaching helpful, impactful from team's perspective. So it's a great opportunity to hear from the team side what really lands in delivering value for them. In July, we're going to be joined by Duncan Lewin, a team coach who is specializing with working in boards system, and he'll invite us to dive into the relational approach of team coaching as well as psychoanalytical thinking. And we also have something a little bit different for July. Together with Jen, we would love to bring this community together in person here in Ireland. So we're planning this informal Ireland edition gathering, either for some sort of a relaxed breakfast or early dinner in Dublin. So if you're based in Ireland, Northern Ireland, or just happen to be around the area, it would be a great opportunity to connect face-to-face, share stories, and continue learning and networking. We're aiming for Thursday, 31st of July. And what I would like to do is to share a very quick survey for those who might be interested. If you would like to attend, join, just fill in the survey so that we know how many people might be interested in this opportunity. All right, so that brings us to the close. For those who might be looking to claim the ICF CCE units, please do fill in this form here, and we will partner with the ICF Ireland chapter to bring those certificates to you. And yeah. Once again, thank you for a great engagement. Jennifer, Caroline, for great content today, and see you next month. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Jen. Bye, Caroline.
Thanks,
Bye.
Lillian. Bye.
Thanks so much.
Session. Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.